In an earlier video, I showed how to maximize multi-filament string from a reel. This video is going to be how to maximize your polyester string from a reel. I'm stringing Bobble RPM Blast rough with from a reel. I've this is a radical 16 by 16 racket, and head calls for 37 feet of string. I used 33.75 feet of string, which is the same thing that I used in the multi-filaments for a 16 by 19 pattern. I'm using the same length because a polyester string is not going to stretch anywhere near as far as a multi-filament is. For the short side, what I've done is I've got 10 feet of string on the short side, which should be more than enough, and I've got the remainder of my string on the long side. I pre-weave all of my strings here just pretty much to get the string up off the floor. Okay, when I used 10 foot on the short side, I ended up with a string length here that reached about 6 inches past my gripper. So I've got about probably close to 17 inches of string here that I'm just going to throw away. But I do know that the next time that I only need about 9 foot 6 inches for the short side, so I can cut off 6 inches of that 5 racket lengths that I used. Alright, on the long side, I'm going to use this string to string my crosses from the top down. Again, I don't use this end, and the reason I don't use this end is because when I tie my knots, I use a starting clamp to grip the string right here, and that starting clamp could damage this string, and I don't want this string where I've grabbed it with a starting clamp to end up in my starting knot. So I'm going to use the other end of my string to tie my starting knot. Okay, I'm doing something a little different with a polyester string. Because a polyester string is stiffer, I don't use the same knot that I use when I'm tying off multi-filament. For multi-filament, I use an I knot for a starting knot. For a polyester string, I usually use a VS starting knot for a starting knot. I've got a clamp that holds the very tip end of that string with a little leather pad to protect the racket, just in case that knot slips and pulls through. It's not going to pull through this time, but it's just a little extra added precaution. Then I've got about 1 inch here that I can cut off and throw away, and what I'm going to do is use this string to continue stringing the remainder of my crosses. Okay, when I finished weaving in all my crosses and tied it off, I had enough string to reach 10 inches past my gripper. So I had 6 inches on top that I could spare, and I've got 10 inches on the bottom for a total of 16 inches. Here's the piece of string that I cut off of it. It's about 18 inches long, I'm guessing. I don't know for sure. But anyway, I think the next time I string one of these rackets, and I've got one right over here to string up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off 10 inches from the 15 racket lengths. That'll give me about 33 feet of string to string this racket. And then I'll be getting more for my money out of a reel of string. Okay, what I've done on this racket now, since I know it's pretty much exactly what I need to string the racket, is I used 32 feet 11 inches of string, and I made the short side 9 foot 8 inches long. Now I'm going to start stringing the racket. I've tried something a little bit different this time. Rather than tying my knot and then running my top string in, what I've done is I've tied my knot, but I haven't cinched it up. Then I took the end of the string that's going to go across and tie off on my starting knot, and ran that in. I like to do that before I tension up these strings that are going to be going over blocked holes, so that I can get my crossover straight and everything. So now I'm going to tie off the string by cinching it up. And once I got that cinched up, I can cut off this end of the string, which is what I'm going to use to go down the racket with. And I've got this string already ran in to get around those blocked holes. Okay, the short side now, this time I used 9 foot 8 inches of string to string the short side. I determined that I needed 9 foot 6 inches, and the 9 foot 8 inches came to about 2 inches past the end of my gripper. So it worked out almost perfectly. So this is what I've got waste on the short side tie off, and this is my starting knot throwaway. So it's very, very little string. Now I'm going to use this, what I cut off the long side, to string the rest of my racket. After stringing the crosses on this racket, I ended up with the string that I used to string the crosses with, which was originally the long side of the racket. It reached about 2.5 inches past my gripper. So this one's about the same as the first one was. I planned for an extra 4 inches more than I actually needed. I had 2 inches up here and about 2 inches down here. So, but I would suggest, unless you have a starting clamp where you can bridge the strings at the end, that you always try to add in a little bit of extra string there. And if you're not familiar with a racket, go with 1 or 2 feet of extra string. I'd rather throw away a foot of string than throw away a whole set of string. You have a wonderful day. If you get any questions or comments, leave them below and I'll try to respond to them as fast as I can. Thank you very much for watching my video.